Hello and welcome back to Slooh. I'm Paul Cox and this is the introduction to the 2018 Slooh Messier Members Marathon. Now, as you know, we are all about learning to explore space. And I can tell you that there is no better way than to learn about all of the different types of astronomical objects in the night sky that you can see with the Slooh telescopes than participating in one of our Messier marathons. We've done, I think, about 3 or 4 of these over the years. I think we were weathered out on a couple as well. But they really are, I can't express to you, if you're new to astronomy, you must not miss this event. So when is it? Mark your diaries for Saturday, the 17th of March. Now, if we are weathered out, when I say weathered out, if we have more winter storms in the Canary Islands on the Saturday, then we'll push it forward to the Sunday. Sunday's not as easy because people have to get up for work on Monday morning. So that's why actually it's scheduled for Saturday the 17th. So if you want to learn about more information, then hop off to use the community sidebar, hop up to featured threads. You can go there. I think we've got a link to it here. Yeah, we have intro to Slooh Members Messier Marathon there, but also live cast. You can get to it on the right hand menu, 2018 Messier Marathon. Now this is where we're going to have all of the information. Now, this is only going to be a brief little kind of 20-minute intro to what we've got in store, because over the next 2 Sundays, on the back of, I'll probably do them before the practical astronomy live casts, so that people in Europe get a chance to listen to it as well. We're going to do one of these little short intro or something new about the Messier Marathon for the next 3 Sundays, and then the week after that is the 17th. So anyway, just seeing if there's any questions there. There are no questions at the moment, but hopefully all will be revealed. Now, actually, I do want to show you one thing, because this is rather nice. I have had permission from long-time Slooh member Andrew Dumbleton in the UK, long-time Slooh friend and friend of mine, and he came up with this. It's a document which basically has a little placeholder for every single Messier object. I'm going to remind you what they are in a short while, but I asked Andrew last week, and he said, yeah, Paul, don't mind, you can take that and you can adapt it for this year's Messier Marathon. Now imagine, after the Messier Marathon, you're going to have an image of each one of these 110 Messier objects, the finest objects in the night sky, on this sheet. Now, I'll tell you, it will look so good. I am so looking forward to this, because we haven't provided any kind of template like this in the past for a Messier Marathon. So I'm really interested to see what members do with this, and I'm certainly going to be doing it as well myself. I'll be back in the UK by then, so I'm going to be up all night with any of my European counterparts. And anyway, listen, what is a Messier Marathon? Now, I've covered this a little bit over the last kind of couple of weeks, but a quick reminder here. Charles Messier, he's the guy up in the right-hand side there, kind of 18th century dude, French comet hunter. Charles Messier was his name, and he was, as I say, a comet hunter, and I'm just going to rearrange myself a little bit, because there's an extract from a book that I would rather like to read you. So while I'm finding that, he was born, by the way, in 1730 in Lorraine, France, And he lived through some fairly turbulent times, I think, in France. And he discovered over a dozen, I think, comets. Just leave this little quote. Actually, that's quite interesting. I've got. I'm looking at a book, by the way. The Messier Marathons were an invention of the 1970s, and 3 people get credit for it. But the main guy is quite linked to Slooh. His name is Don Machtoltz, and I've got his book in my hand at the moment, The Observing Guide to the Messier Marathon. I've got a PDF version of this as well, which is in the public domain now, and I'll publish that in the Messier Marathon group and the discussion boards. But Don is a long-time Slooh member, and he has recovered some of his periodic comet discoveries over the years with Slooh's telescopes. And I've spoken to him on several occasions. In fact, we've had him on a couple of shows at points. But anyway, that's the book that I'm just reading about now. I'm just going to try and frame this up for you a little bit nicer. So a bit of my OCD coming in here. No, gone the wrong way. Get that way a bit. That'll do. There's an interesting chronology here that he's got of Charles Messier's timeline. And in 1757, he begins a search for Halley's Comet. Somebody else actually finds it in 58. But he also found M1. No other people had found M1. It wasn't known as M1 though, obviously it was the Crab Nebulae. Chinese astronomers actually witnessed the star going supernova in the 1000s, so 700-800 years before Charles was looking at it through his telescope. But in 1761 he observes a transit of Venus. He made a member of the Royal Society of London in 1765. That's quite an achievement to get in there. And those were the real heady times, such exciting times to be one of those early scientific philosophers, especially in London and the Royal Society, and at Greenwich with all the astronomer royals and things. And in 1769, Charles Messier produces his first catalogue. He also gets married the following year. Unfortunately, only 3 years later, his wife and son die. But in 1771, sorry, I didn't mean to skip off that and be so flippant about that. In 1771, he published his first catalogue, which included the objects M1, the Crab Nebulae, to M45, and M45 is the Pleiades star cluster. And, you know, I'm not a great one for learning all this kind of stuff, but, you know, some of these numbers, you'll just pick them up, you know, over time. In astronomy, you will just pick them up. I'm just going to try and reframe this. Hate it. I like it looking like that. Anyway, sorry. Carry on, Cox. So he published his first catalogue then. He was introduced to Pierre Machin in 1774. You'll know him by Machin's Galaxy, which is that M80 maybe. He spots in 1777 specks crossing the sun. Not the International Space Station, but sunspots. Then in 1780, so 9 years after he published his first Messier catalogue, in 1780 he publishes his second catalogue, which includes M1 to M68. And then a year later he publishes his final catalogue, which covered M80 to M106. Of course, Uranus was discovered in that year as well. And then in 1783, so 2 years after Messier finishes his catalogue, we've got William Herschel. So William Herschel, one of my astronomy heroes,
begins listing and cataloguing objects with his sister Caroline. First of all, from his house in my home city of Bath in the southwest of England. And in 1786, Herschel published his first catalogue, the general catalogue, which turns in, if you were looking at the previous show, turns into the new general catalogue and then those index catalogues as well afterwards. But there's some other stuff in this book that I just wanted to read to you, actually, from Don Matschulz's book. And it talks about Messier's main motive for assembling this catalogue, that we're going to be observing all of these objects in a single night. We'll take a further look at that. But he talks about his motivation for producing this catalogue when he wrote in a memoir in 1801. He says, I won't do the French accent for fear that our supernova hunting and discoverer member Emmanuel Conseil is watching. But he says, what caused me to undertake the catalogue was the nebula I discovered above the southern horn of Taurus on September 12, 1758, whilst observing the comet of that year. This nebula had such a resemblance to a comet in its form and brightness that I endeavoured to find others, so that astronomers would not confuse these same nebulae with comets just beginning to appear. I observed further with suitable refractors for the discovery of comets, and this is the purpose I had in mind in forming the catalogue. So whenever I've been talking about Messier's catalogue, I've always been saying to you, he wasn't interested in finding these lovely, bright and beautiful objects, because frankly, most of them just looked like small, dim, fuzzy patches to him. They actually looked like comets. His prime motivation was he was fed up with catching something in his telescope view, thinking that he'd won the lottery by discovering a new comet, and it turns out to be one of these faint deep sky objects, either a nebulae or a galaxy or even a faint star cluster. So that was his motivation for doing that. And it's interesting, isn't it, that M1, he saw M1, and it gives you a good feel actually for how good his telescope was. If M1, the Crab Nebula, which really is quite a bright object, only appeared as a kind of faint, diffuse comet. So anyway, there was another one under here. I'm going to tell you about M110 later, because there were some add-on objects as well. And in fact, 110 is thought to be a duplication, but now there is kind of agreement on which object we're going to look at for that. But anyway, so that's it. That's enough of that. So let's just talk about. So I said that Messier Marathon is something that these three guys came up with independently in the 70s, and Don Matschulz was one of them. And it was really for the visual pursuit. I mean, it was well before modern day CCD cameras became affordable for amateur astronomers. I mean, not that they're affordable now. Could you afford a $30,000 CCD camera like the ones on some of the ones on the back of the Slooh telescopes? I know I certainly couldn't if I saved up for a decade. But anyway, this is from the time of amateur astronomy where everything was visual. And it's that visual pursuit which is still enjoyed by many people when they think about a Messier Marathon. Although, many of us, we really don't benefit from clear March skies and clear low horizons that are required to observe these 110 objects in Charles Messier's catalogue in a single night. And don't forget, there's only a short period of time. There's only a few week period from kind of mid-March to early April when all 110 of Messier's objects are visible, and we can see that in the sky here. Let's take a look here. So this is our planetarium software, the sky. Two things we always need to do when we start up our planetarium software. One is check that the time and the date are set to when we want. Well, it's not. So let's move forward to March. Let's move forward to the 17th. Let's move forward to 2010, which I think is the start of missions that particular night. And the other thing that we need to do is check to make sure that the location of our planetarium software is set up, and that's set up correctly for the Slooh Canary Islands Observatory. So here we are. Here is the sky, and there you can see each one of those little targets, and they're numbered in order, and each one of those represents a Messier object, and these are what we've got to capture to have performed a Messier Marathon on the night of the 17th of March. Now you can see over here in the west, you see Venus and Mercury are just setting here at the beginning of ops, but we've got target 1, target 2, target 3, then we've got 4, 5 and 6 in a very small cluster, which I believe includes the Andromeda Galaxy. Now these set very, very quickly after sunset, after twilight. So we're going to have to image some of those when they're below our soft horizon, when they're not the best positioned objects to see. Telescopes are going to be cooling down. These objects are low on the horizon, so we're looking through loads of atmosphere, and they're setting really quickly. But luckily this year, what we haven't had before when we've done one of these is 4 telescopes at our disposal in the Canary Islands. Plus, we're going to be using the Chile ones as well. A lot of people will tell you, you can't see the Messier objects on the Southern Hemisphere. Oh, yes, you can. And in fact, you can see a great number of them far, far better. But anyway, I was going back. I was saying that this was designed really as a visual pursuit. And not many of us really have those kind of skies to do that. And some amateur astronomers, you know, they continue to fight the introduction of technology. From the very first meeting I went to at a local astronomical society, when I told some people there, you know, 15, 16 years ago, I had a go-to telescope, you know, that I'd hooked up to my computer and was voice controlling Slooh to Jupiter, and off it would go. You know, they looked at me in this disdainful way. And I know some of you have come across this as well in various societies. You know, they look down on you, and they don't think that you're worthy to even call yourself, even if you wanted to, an amateur astronomer. Because for them, observing through a telescope is through an eyepiece, and it's learning the night sky so that you can star hop, move your telescope from one bright star to the next until you find your target. That's where they get their buzz from. But as I say, I certainly don't have the time to do that. I don't have the skies to do that in the UK. And the fact remains that modern go-to telescopes and robotic telescopes like Sloohs have opened up the hobby to far more people who can devote, far more people who can't devote years to learning the night sky like those visual star hoppers do. Now, I don't have anything against them. And I wish them good luck. That's how they enjoy their pursuit of astronomy. But to visually star hop to each Messier object over the course of the night is obviously quite challenging, because you've got to learn the night sky. But so too is the planning of a Messier Marathon using robotic telescopes like Sloohs. And this is where I need your help to do all of this. This is the Members Messier Marathon, so very much with this I have my Slooh Members hat on. Nothing really to do with being Slooh Tech or anything else. Now, what this takes is collaboration between members to ensure that we're all timing our respective missions to capture the objects, not only when they're visible, like those ones I've just pointed out, that are going to be setting to the west, but also at their optimum position to ensure the resulting images are as good as they can be. And that also means choosing the best telescope to use for each object based on its brightness and apparent size. That also requires planning and knowledge. And I'll tell you, once you've participated in one of these, you will learn more about using Slooh and the capabilities of all of its telescopes than probably 2 years or more of normal use. So participating in a Slooh Messier Marathon really is going to help you gain an understanding of the best way to plan your missions to maximize the quality of the resulting images.
And the vast array of different object types in the Messier catalogues is going to help you gain a better understanding of different object categories and the differences between them. And what really makes this special to me is the fact that this all occurs in a single night. Now, I don't know about you, but for me to learn stuff, I like to learn stuff in a fairly intensive way. And there is no more intensive pursuit than this Messier Marathon. Now, when I was saying we need to schedule our missions to capture these objects at the best time, let's just roll forward our planetarium software an hour at a time to see how the night sky and the visibility of these Messier objects changes as each hour passes. Keep an eye open on the right hand side of the sky chart where objects are going to be setting to the west shortly after we start. 1 hour forward, bang, already we've lost probably the first 5 or 6 objects, which will be too low. They'll be behind the hill. We physically will not be able to see them. So we have to get those in the first hour. But as soon as we've cleared those off, as soon as we've ticked them off the schedule, we then need to start optimizing which objects we schedule, where they are in the sky. And the best place, we don't want to hop over here to target 48 when it's still low on the east, because in an hour's time, it's going to be even higher. But there is this bundle of objects here, 18, 19, 20, all around here, Taurus. So we've got M1's going to be in here as well somewhere. We're going to get those as quickly as we can before, after another hour, they start to get lower themselves. But then look, we've got this major tranche of objects between Virgo and Leo, this huge cluster of Messier objects and beautiful galaxies that we all know and love, the Virgo cluster, the Leo clusters, triplets and stuff like that. So we don't want to image those earlier than we need to. We need to image them early enough so that we stay on track to image all 110 throughout the night. But we want to image these when they're as high in the sky as possible. And here we can see at midnight local time at the Canary Islands, this group of objects, this is when we can hit all of these. Look, how high are they? They're all about 50, 60 degrees above the horizon. We're looking through very little atmosphere, perfect seeing conditions. We need to be careful when we go an hour later, because then some of those objects are approaching what's called the transit. And the transit of an object is when each one of those passes over that orange line cutting straight down the middle of our sky chart. It's called the meridian, and it's transiting from the eastern hemisphere to the western hemisphere of the sky. And our telescopes can't point to the meridian. In fact, they can't point to an object when it's within half an hour of the meridian. So we've got some smart planning to do there, to image those when they're as high as they can be, but without hitting that transit zone. Now, if we hop forward through the night, we've got now starts appearing quite a problematic group of objects, because we're now 3 hours away from dawn in the Canary Islands, and bang, here we are. The center of the Milky Way starts appearing down in the southeast. And this is all around the constellations of Scorpius, of Sagittarius. We've got some of our favorite nebulae and star clusters down there in that region, but they remain really quite low from the Canary Islands. Let's hop forward another hour. There we are. We can see our target number 106. That's not the Messier number, that's the order in which we're going to be observing these. Sneaks into view. There's 107, 109. So these, and there's finally 110, but we are then into our morning twilight period. So there's some real smart planning to do there, but look at this cluster around the center of the Milky Way at the bottom of this image. And this is where the Southern Hemisphere Observatory, Chile, is going to come in really handy, because let's take a look where those objects are in the sky when we switch to the southern hemisphere location of the Chile Observatory. So bang, there we go. Let's look up in the same way. And just as the Canary Islands Observatory is closing in morning twilight, all of those objects in the center of the Milky Way come into perfect view in the last couple of hours of Chile missions. So you can see here we've got the other cluster between Virgo and Leo up in the top right, so we can still use the Chile observatories for all of those objects as well. So it's really going to come into its own having both observatories doing this at the same time. And I think it's 9 o'clock, something like that, 9 o'clock UTC, that the Chile observatory closes down on March 18th, the morning of March 18th. And we can just see there, target 110 is higher from the Chile observatory than it was at the end of missions from the Canary Islands. But 107 up here is slightly lower. So there's these subtle changes in the object's visibility that is really, really going to help us. And the fact that we can get so many of these southern hemisphere gems in Sagittarius and Scorpius in the Chile telescopes means that this should be one of the best Messier marathons we have ever done. And I'm just imagining this beautiful sheet filled out with all of the images that we're going to acquire over the night, and I just think it's going to be a spectacular event. I don't think I've ever looked forward to a Messier Marathon in the same way as I'm looking forward to this one. Now, there is more information, and we'll keep updating this information over on the discussion boards. So I'm just going to hop over there myself. Oh, actually, there was another thing that I wanted to show you before we go there. Now, this is a master schedule. Now, we're going to work out a method of, and we're going to do this during the week before, probably we normally do the scheduling for this like the day before the Messier Marathon, because obviously members, including myself, we don't want to tie our reservation slots up, our quota up, booking nights in advance. So what we tend to do is we're going to find a way of getting this schedule, and this is all of the objects in order, so you can see straight away here. Hopefully you can see this. I don't know if it's big enough for you to read, but M74 is one of the first objects, is one of the first objects to set from the Canary Islands down in the west horizon. And there we can see some of the others that we were talking about, M31, M32, M110. This is saying that M52 is not possible, but it will be, because we've got some nice little workarounds for that. But what we're going to do here is you will be able to put your name, you'll kind of be able to stick your flag, if you like, in your favorite Messier objects and say, right, you lot, I'm going to use my mission reservations for those 5 objects if you're an astronomer member, or that 1 object if you're an apprentice member. So going back on something I think Darryl was asking. So you can only schedule 1 object at a time if you're an apprentice member. So this actually is, if there was ever a reason to, upgrade to an astronomer member, then this would be it. But don't forget that what we're all going to be doing, and this is a collaborative exercise, we are all going to be snapping images live on the live telescope pages, so that we can start putting them in, populating our lovely poster, made possible by Andrew Dumbleton's first template of that. So anyway, you can see here, we'll get this published. Not sure quite how we're going to do this yet, but we'll get this published so that you can put your name against your favorite objects. And there you can see the last couple of objects that we've got to make sure that we capture at the end of the night, M2 and M30. I know M73 is quite difficult as well. So that's what we're going to publish in the discussion boards over here.
So you'll be able to keep track of that. But we're going to go into more detail. Next week, I think we'll go through the catalogue itself and we'll look at why this is such a great exercise to do if you're new to astronomy, because we'll take a look next week at the huge variety of objects that we're going to see in a single night. Not only the different types of objects, like open clusters versus globular clusters, like dark nebulae versus reflection or emission nebulae, but we're also going to be able to see the huge variation within each one of those categories. We saw in the practical astronomy show a little bit earlier on. In fact, we can go there now. We can take a look at the homepage, have a look at the observation log at the moment, and there's M10, one of the globular clusters that we're going to be capturing on the night. But if we hop along the observation log, there's another small globular cluster, or another globular cluster which is a lot smaller, not a Messier object. There's another globular cluster which is really, really small. Some of these and some of the Messier globular clusters that we'll be looking at, some of them are very dense and compact, but others are quite diffuse. Not as good as something like Omega Centauri and some of the southern hemisphere globular clusters. But that's the other thing that we'll do in the night. With 4 Canary Islands telescopes at our disposal, plus the telescope in Chile, we'll actually have some spare slots. And what a lot of people doing Messier marathons do is they fill in these little slots with some other exciting objects to look at. So we might pick some of those objects that Keith Smith was talking about, which supplement the Messier Marathon. It was another catalogue by somebody called Bennett. So we might look at some of the best Southern Hemisphere objects from the Bennett catalogue. But if we can, what we should really do is hone in on some of those objects that Charles Messier was trying to find back in the 1700s, and which he found over a dozen of comets. So let's find those little slots in the schedule on the night, and we'll do what he was doing, and we'll go comet hunting for a bit as well. But anyway, what we'll do next week is we'll see this huge variation between not only the different types of object out there, but also the differences within those categories. So we'll take a proper look at how we do that. Then the following week, we'll cover exactly all of the mechanics that are involved for you to be participating in this. So we'll be looking at exactly how and where you can put your name down to bag those particular objects, and then pin down how we're going to work out when people can schedule. Because obviously other members who might not have seen even that we're doing this, I don't know, they must be living under a rock, but they might come along and they might take some of those critical schedule slots that we want to keep open for those really difficult early and late Messier objects. So that's what we're going to do over the next couple of weeks. But for now, make sure that you certainly book out Saturday, the 17th of March. And if you can, book out Sunday, the 18th of March as well. Just in case we got poor weather on the Saturday, we'll shift the whole event to Sunday. But that would probably mean that a lot of us might be a little bit late for work on Monday morning, because this is an all-night affair. But we're going to be on air, not just me. I know Helen's going to come on and do some. We'll get Paige on, maybe talk a little bit more about, the actual objects that we're seeing, things like the brilliant supernova remnant of the Crab Nebula. Maybe look at some of the galaxies, look at some of that galaxy morphology that Paige has been talking about in her Intro to Astronomy course. So we've got lots to look forward to over the next couple of weeks. You have to join us. You cannot miss the opportunity to be able to fill out this sheet with all of the images that you capture of the 110 spectacular objects in Charles Messier's catalogue. So I'll see you next week for Practical Astronomy. We'll probably do the Messier Marathon live cast maybe an hour before that. So it makes it a little bit more convenient for some of our European members over there. We don't forget you, honestly. Anyway, that's all for now. Please make sure you do this, because if there's, to me, it's the observing event of the year. It really is, you know, outside of eclipses and stuff like that. But this as a community observing project is such good fun, but also you learn so much over the course of a single night using Slooh's telescopes. So I'm Paul Cox, this is Slooh. Hopefully I'll see you again next week. Take care. Bye. Telescopes than participating in one of our Messier Marathons. We've done, I think, about 3 or 4 of these over the years. I think we were weathered out on a couple as well. But they really are, I can't express to you, if you're new to astronomy, you must not miss this event. So when is it? Mark your diaries for Saturday, the 17th of March. Now, if we are weathered out, when I say weathered out, if we have more winter storms in the Canary Islands on the Saturday, then we'll push it forward to the Sunday. Sunday's not as easy because people have to get up for work on Monday morning. So that's why actually it's scheduled for Saturday the 17th. So if you want to learn about more information, then hop off to use the community sidebar, hop up to featured threads. You can go there. I think we've got a link to it here. Yeah, we have intro to Slooh Members Messier Marathon there, but also live cast. You can get to it on the right hand menu, 2018 Messier Marathon. Now this is where we're going to have all of the information. Now this is going to be because this is rather nice. I have had permission from long-time Slooh member Andrew Dumbleton in the UK, long-time Slooh friend and friend of mine, and he came up with this. It's a document which basically has a little placeholder for every single Messier object. I'm going to remind you what they are in a short while, but I asked Andrew last week and he said, yeah, Paul, don't mind, you can take that and you can adapt it for this year's Messier Marathon. Brief little kind of 20-minute intro to what we've got in store, because over the next 2 Sundays, on the back of, I'll probably do them before the practical astronomy live casts, so that people in Europe get a chance to listen to it as well. We're going to do one of these little short intro or something new about the Messier Marathon for the next 3 Sundays, and then the week after that is the 17th. So anyway, just seeing if there's any questions there. There are no questions at the moment, but hopefully all will be revealed. Now, actually, I do want to show you one thing. Hello and welcome back to Slooh. I'm Paul Cox, and this is the introduction to the 2018 Slooh Messier Members Marathon. Now, as you know, we are all about learning to explore space. And I can tell you that there is no better way than to learn about all of the different types of astronomical objects in the night sky that you can see with the Slooh telescope.